Salve. In this video, we're going to learn how to form questions in Latin. Many languages have something that happens at the beginning of a sentence to indicate to the listener or reader that it's a question. In English, we generally do this by changing the word order of the sentence. So, for example, instead of starting a sentence with "you are," an English question would start with "are you" instead. Latin indicates this by adding the enclitic "ne" to the end of the first word in the sentence. And by the way, an enclitic is basically just a specific kind of suffix. So, while the statement "es defesa" means "you are tired," and the question would be "es ne defesa," which means "are you tired?" Not too complicated. Alright, moving on though. The Romans also had a specific way to ask questions that expected certain answers. The first way was to start a sentence with the word nonne, which means that you're asking a question that expects a yes answer. In English, we do this pretty regularly, and people don't even think about it because it's so automatic. In English, we say things like, "Isn't he here? You're ready, aren't you?" or "Didn't they leave?" So, using a variation of our earlier example, the question "non ne defesa es" means "aren't you tired?" or "you're tired, aren't you?" You could even go so far as to maybe say "you're tired, right?" And all of these expect the answer to be yes. The opposite of this is to begin the sentence with the word num, which indicates that you're expecting a no. In English, we'd say things like, "He isn't here, is he?" "You aren't ready, are you?" or "They didn't leave, did they?" So, num defesa es means "you aren't tired, are you?" Alright, that's how you ask basic yes and no questions in Latin, but we're not done yet. So some questions will begin with an interrogative. An interrogative is just a word that indicates a question simply by its inclusion. The most common ones in English are who, what, where, when, why, and how. The most common Latin equivalents of these words would be quis and quid for who and what. Ubi means where, and by the way, it can also mean when sometimes. Quo is another word for where, and quando is another word for when. Cur is the word for why. Curiosity would be a derivative of that. And quomodo is the word for how. So you'll notice that most of the Latin interrogatives begin with the letter Q, and a QU obviously, just like most of the English interrogatives begin with a WH. If the first word in a sentence begins with a Q in Latin, there's a pretty good possibility that it's going to be a question. Now, the Romans didn't add an enclitic when they were using one of these interrogatives. Starting a sentence with one of these told the listener or the reader that the sentence was a question, which made the addition of the ne unnecessary. So, we'll get Latin sentences such as ubi sumus, meaning where are we? Quid spectas, which means what are you looking at? And cur pugnant, which means why are they fighting? Okay, so we'll run through some examples. The Latin sentence puellae laborant is just a statement meaning the girls are working. So we're going to take this one and form it into various questions. First, laborantne puellae means are the girls working? So you may have noticed that Latin speakers would usually put the verb at the end of the sentence, but when it was a question, they would very often move it to the beginning of the sentence. Alright, next one. Cur puellae laborant means why are the girls working? And again, we don't have an enclitic here because the interrogative cur indicates it's a question, so it's already taken care of. Next, non ne pu alla laborant means aren't the girls working? Or you could also say the girls are working, aren't they? And num pu alla laborant means the girls aren't working, are they? Okay, so that's it for how to ask questions in Latin. Let me know if you have any questions. Vale.